English translation, 211th contact. Monday, 18th August 1986, Bro 3 Unjo 1 hours.
Yesterday, we talked about the fact that the aid agencies, which operate their craft here on Earth, are actually profit gangster organizations, because they only provide their so-called assistance for a fee, whereby they put aside a large portion of the cash donations for their own machinations, such as for compensation, etc. What do you think of this? And do you also have aid agencies for people in need of assistance?
Such aid agencies do exist with us. However, not in relation to our own people, but rather in the context of the assistance that we provide for other peoples who belong to our Federation, respectively, who are cared for by our Federation, because they still live in lower levels of development and are not yet in a position to bring themselves to a state of their own assistance.
Interesting. But this does not contradict your directives, which state that you may not interfere in the affairs of foreign worlds and peoples, who are not yet developed far enough to be able to master spaceflight.
Concerning the peoples, to whom we can provide assistance, on the one hand, it concerns those who are arranged into our Federation for the purpose of protection, and on the other hand, the fact applies that they know very much about spaceflight technology and, thus, also about the existence of other civilizations on other planets, and they also stand in connection with these. However, they are not yet in a position to manage their own affairs in such a way that they would not have to suffer any need.
Aha, now I understand. But how do you handle the matters around these aid agencies? Are profits also made there, and are relief goods, etc., set aside as compensation for giving assistance, as this is the case with the earthly aid agencies? By the way, I find this to be extremely infamous because I am of the view that assistance should never be handled in any way that involves repayment and profit. In my opinion, an aid agency should consist of people who should not provide assistance in order to be repaid, but who should provide it voluntarily in their leisure time, and, thus, without compensation.
That is also of correctness. What exists on the Earth in the so-called aid agencies must honestly be described as profiteering and as deceiving the donors of the relief goods because, especially with respect to the monetary contributions, respectively the cash donations, a large percentage is set aside for the machinations and the compensations of those members of the organization, who do not provide their assistance voluntarily but only for a respectable compensation. All such activity is absolutely unacceptable with us, because all our helpers of all aid agencies, which operate both privately as well as for the whole population, work free of charge and use their leisure time for this. But on Earth, this is not the case because, in truth, a large percentage of the donations, especially the cash donations, is set aside as a machination and for remuneration, which, in our view, represents an evil theft of the donated goods and against those in need of assistance.
I also think so. And when I think of the horrendous compensations of the bosses, etc., of the aid agencies, it makes me sick because of such immense nastiness.
Help for fellow human beings. Nature and all its life forms, not only because human beings need help, must never be a profit-making business of any kind, but all help must be of a voluntary and gratuitous nature, no matter how materialistic a human or an entire humanity may be. But what is being done to the contrary by the earthly aid agencies is criminal and deceitful.
Your word in the ear of the criminals and the fraudsters. To my knowledge, it is legally permitted that the so-called aid agencies, which are, in truth, actually profit organizations, may collect about 40% of the donations as machinations and as compensations.
As explained, that corresponds to criminal and deceitful actions, because real assistance, in any case, can always only be done gratuitously and through leisure employment. It is different in the case when a nation or state, through a national decision, makes state goods available for providing assistance and is responsible for the machinations and compensations, etc.
Thank you. Then something else. Yesterday, there was a man here who talked constantly, whereby we hardly got a chance to speak. He spoke very much, but in truth, he hardly stated anything. What do you think of such human beings, or what is your people's teaching in this connection?
There are people, both women and men alike, who are unusually happy to hear themselves speak, which is why they talk very long-windedly if they state anything. They talk very much because on the one hand, they are unable to control themselves, and on the other hand, because they appear to be greater than they really are. Thus, they mistakenly believe that their long speeches would explain important things in detail, although they are nothing more than empty burdens that get on the listener's nerves, as you tend to say. Such people, whom we designate as pointless speakers, also believe themselves to be elevated people and consciously or unconsciously try to show off to others, whereby they also consider themselves as very intelligent. But this, in reality, actually speaks contrary to the intelligence that they possess. Pointless speakers or extensive talkers, as we also call them, suffer from a peculiar inferiority syndrome, which they themselves do not recognize, and they try to make up for this. Nevertheless, with their senseless, extensive talking, by what means they strain the nerves of their fellow human beings.
And does this occur with you frequently?
No, because these issues were resolved and corrected with us very early on. Consequently, they no longer appear.
But here on Earth, one still encounters many people who are sick in this hospital.
I do not understand your words entirely.
Here, it is said that someone is sick in a certain hospital if something is not right but is just wrong or morbid.
Ah, I understand.
Since we are already at it, even if I get myself into trouble with the male world. Throughout the time of my life, I have made the determination again and again that, generally speaking, the intelligence of the female gender is dominant to the male. I would like to describe the female achievements of intelligence as nearly extraordinary, when I combine everything in terms of the overall intelligence of Earth humanity, and particularly the male world. Of course, it should be noted that there are always great geniuses among men, while there is hardly any mention of this on the female side. However, I think that this must not obscure the fact that the truly great intelligence actually lies with the female gender. But this is suppressed and disparaged by the male world because it estimates itself to be better, greater, and more intelligent than it is in truth. This led me to the thought that the actual and true mass of intelligence must actually lie with the female gender, from where it becomes transferred to the male gender, wherewith I mean an inheritance, through which the intelligence of the mother becomes transferred to the child, so also to the male offspring. And since this has to be the reason for the oppression of the woman, perhaps lies with the man, as it is customary here on our earth, in that the man, in his arrogance, cannot accept the fact that the female gender is now just once blessed with more intelligence. Perhaps it may be that through this, the male world has succumbed to a phobia, and is just afraid of the fact that the female gender could take over the rule. But surely, there are still many other illogical reasons on the part of the male world for the oppression and unequal rights of women. Now, I do not want to say with all this that the male world only consists of zeros and rivets, but I would like to bring into play that it would be very appropriate if men would muster up more tolerance, respect, and equality toward women, so that women can also expand their entitled freedom and develop in their appropriate framework. In fact, as I have realized, it is such that the female gender, in many aspects of life, humanity and peacefulness, etc., is remarkably more developed than the male gender. Consequently, the women judge and approach many things more intelligently. Also, their logic seems to me to be more pronounced, as well as their sense of true freedom, love, and harmony. However, it is just these things that evidently do not fit into the clutter of the lords of creation, which is why they continually try to disregard, oppress, and exploit women. But unfortunately, still many women lend a hand in this, for which the reasons are often inexplicable, especially when these women are unworthy of being female or unworthy of life, such as with prostitution or servitude to an evil man, etc. Unfortunately, there are also the emancipated women and the women, respectively the mistress women, who appear to be powerful and who set themselves above others and bring them under their rule, as the man does this with the woman. Therefore, the fact still remains, however, that the intelligence of the woman, even of both kinds of sexes, has its black sheep, which are of a completely different type, since even women become overburdening, despotic, attacking, and illogical, etc., as this also happens with men. There are degeneracies everywhere, but these do not cancel out what I said with regard to the woman.
What you explained is of correctness.
I think so, also. That is why I said it, yes. It is my effective opinion. Sometimes, I must confess that I am ashamed when I see how women let themselves be degraded or be humiliated by men. When I see how men treat women like dirt, they beat, prostitute, exploit, and rob them of their personal opinion and freedom. And when I see how the female gender must suffer almost entirely under the rule of the male world, unable to have equal rights and often being treated like a rag that has all the filth of the world in itself.
You drive hard into the court, but I must ascribe correctness to your words.
With you, this is fortunately not so, as it is the case here on the earth. Anyhow, that is what Simya Se taught me. But what about with other peoples, with other peoples of your federation, etc.?
In our entire federation, there exist laws that prevent such, as it is common on the earth. Nevertheless, there are foreign civilizations and peoples on foreign worlds who are not allied with us and who exhibit similar conditions of the mentioned form, as these are usual on earth. But now, dear friend, it is again the time that I turn to my duties. In the future, I will no longer be able to come so often. Farewell, and until we meet again.
Bye, my friend. Take care.